My ultimate goal is to help you land a job with your company of choice. And because I came from top tier tech companies, that is my focus. That's group coaching program. Also land an offer using my Amazon Star interview technique or Star method. Hint, hint, in landing jobs at Apple, at Facebook, at Google as well. On guests that have the experience that you guys are looking for. Google as an engineering manager. Three, to introduce Richard on what was his experience in landing a job offer at Google and what was his role.
I used to be senior engineer and manager on my. I managed a team of sales engineers.
You're a founder of many things. Basically, I was curious to see Amazonian and ex-Googler has to say about the differentiations of working on those two environment, because a lot of my YouTube audience and customers are very interested to getting dream company, which is the Amazon, the Apple, and the Google of the world.
Is basically that they're very similar in many ways. They're both big tech companies. They both have a very innovative culture and so on. But the big difference is that is actually captured in the hiring process, and the way that they treat people based on that, the way that the management works is also based on the same differentiation in the hiring process. Google hires smart people, and they hire for people who are really clever. They hire for people who are productive as well, but they focus on smart. And if you're smart and you're reasonably productive, you'll get a job there. And then you get into Google, and basically they try to make you happy. They give you lots of challenging work, and they give you lots of freedom, and hopefully things go really well. And people who are like that do well in Google. Amazon is a bit different. Amazon hires for productive, and they also hire for smart as well. So both of them, it's not like you can be dumb and get into either one, or you can be unproductive and get into either one. But Amazon's focus is on productive, and so they hire productive people. They have a structure in place that makes people even more productive, and they focus on output, and output is what it's all about at Amazon, and operational excellence. And so on, but that's their approach. So if you're the kind of person who likes to be all about output and getting things done, then you fit in really well at Amazon, and that's the way that the interview is structured at Amazon as well. And so that changes the way the dynamic of the organization. At Google, it's very focused on making employees happy, making it a great place to be an employee, and so they have lots of focus on employee happiness and employee work-life balance and so on.
Still going through a recession probably for at least another year or so. Does referral matter, and how did you get in?
So in both cases, I was referred. At Google, I was working at Deutsche Bank at the time, and I had a friend of mine from Adelaide. I'm Australian. We lived in London together. He got a job at Google, and then he referred me. And it turns out that two of my other colleagues that I knew from Deutsche Bank were also in the same team, and so they referred me. And then you go through the interview process, and at the time at Google, it felt very, very much like a nice chat. This is the way it felt for me at least. And then I got a job there, and it felt very lucky in some ways. I've seen the other side of this, and I've seen that referrals really help because they cut you through the initial pile. So in most cases, anyone who gets referred at least gets their CV reviewed by the hiring manager, whereas people who don't get referred will often just get filtered out by the recruiting machine.
Google is still asking a lot of questions that is non-behavioral related, but more situational. Yeah. How do you feel about those type of questions? For example, how many windows are in cars in Seattle?
Oh, right. They're still asking those questions.
Yeah, right? Those questions are still around. I actually came across a couple of those on google.com and also in Quora. And what are they looking for when they're asking for those type of questions?
Okay, so what they're looking for is someone who is smart and can think on it, and that's what they get when you ask these questions. In some cases, some of these questions, you know the trick, and you sometimes you just get it by luck. Sometimes you think through it and it works well. Sometimes you're familiar with the question and you can answer it really well. With practice, some of them are really easy to answer. Like those estimation questions, you either know how to do an estimation question or you don't. And so it's not to be honest, I don't think they're great questions. But as far as they go, if they're still used, what they're looking for is hearing how you're thinking about things. How do you work through an answer? If you're in a situation where you're being asked something out of the ordinary, an abstract thing, or something's happening and it's unexpected, can you make sense of this situation and communicate in a way that gives other people confidence, that know what you're talking about, actually know what you're talking about and you're able to talk through things. So with the car windows one, I want to hear, okay, how are you going to think about the number of car windows in Seattle? I need to think about, well, how many people are in Seattle? How many cars are in Seattle? How many windows are in each car? All that sort of stuff, and just come up with an estimate and talk about how the investment might be high, might be low here. How would I adjust this for reality, and what would I expect? It doesn't matter whether you get it exactly right or wrong, but if you're way off,
Right.
it probably means that your thinking process isn't right.
Leader at Google and how you got into companies such as Google. You're right. And that's exactly what I've shared with my clients and my audience as well. Own perspective, because I did spend 2 years at Google as a senior recruiter there. Google, and I remember the days when I started, the first thing we were being trained on was I was a technical recruiter. So we had to
Yeah,
know every single thing about tech. Everything, what coding
yeah,
means, what coding languages mean, what's the difference between scripting and coding. By the way, coding, how many volume of code can you put on a sheet or a page, right? So it was amazing. As somebody from a recruiting background, I feel that I've learned how, and I'm sharing this part because a lot of my audience are recruiters and HR professional as well. To land an
yeah.
opportunity at places like Google, you have to be smart and the ability to pick up very quickly. I was not asked any of those situational questions. Now, if that have, I'm not sure if I would be able to pass the interview. Let's be very real here. A referral, interesting and phenomenal
Mm.
experience. I mean, the perk was endless. As you can see, as we're talking, we were just having a conversation about coffee, how I love my coffee black
Yeah,
before you came here. And I tremendously miss my barista right in front of my cubicle at Google. So that
yeah.
was the highlight. Background as an engineering manager and also coming from an IC background as well at Google. Any final thought for them?
Most important thing is to think about to like be yourself, right? Is the most important thing, to be honest. If you pretend to be someone you're not, then you may get the job, but that won't make you happy in that role. That won't be the right role for you. So number one, be yourself. Be true to who you are and be who you are. You don't want to be hired to be someone else. You want to be hired to be yourself. The second thing is to focus in on you mentioned your STAR method. I think that's a great approach. But focusing on the things that you've done, the things you've actually achieved in any interview, like Amazon in particular, because Amazon has the behavioral, like, what have you done? Tell me about a time when type questions. And because they have that approach, you need to respond with situation. I've forgotten the acronym now, but start the situation.
Are you talking about the STAR method to me right now?
Yeah. So the STAR method is the right way to answer Amazon interview questions, but that method works everywhere else as well,
Right,
because
right.
what you're doing is you're talking about what I did in a particular situation, and the reason why it's powerful is because someone interviewing you can ask you questions and you know the answers, right? You don't have to make sure you know them because you were there. And so
Yep.
the thing that you think about examples in your life where you've been through and exhibited these things and places where you failed, and be able to talk about both of them in a coherent fashion, right? Even the ones you failed, what did you learn from not succeeding? What did you learn from not being diving deep enough? How did you change, and how did you do that better the next time? But you want to talk about actual concrete examples of these situations with a team of 80 people.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for your time and just for being here. You are adding value in a way more than you could ever imagine. As mentioned
Okay.
earlier, my community across all the social platform are thirsty right now in looking to hear from just former Amazonian and ex-Googler, specifically in a hiring authority position, just to make them feel more not comfortable. They're not going to be comfortable until they land the job offer. But I'm
Yeah.
trying to, at the same time, motivate people. Many of them, they came to me, they studied so hard for 2 months, and I know if they have their final loop, they will land an offer, but the position end up getting filled by somebody else internally. And that happens a lot nowadays. So I'm constantly looking for ways to motivate them and let them know that it's okay and don't put all your eggs in one basket. Guys, if you're
No, yeah.
listening to me, do not put all your eggs in one basket. I've said this
Yeah.
every single live stream that I do run 2 live stream every single week now on Tuesdays and Friday. And I would love to have you come back on my Friday leadership series. How does someone without the big tech company get into like the Amazon? And I wanted to forewarn you when that happened, 99% of the questions are all catered around Amazon.
All of these companies have an interview process designed
Yep.
to have much higher false negative rate than false positive rate. So they'd much rather reject a good candidate than accept a bad candidate.
Yep,
So
yep.
good candidates get rejected all the time, and I've seen a lot of them be rejected by just mistakes or by just happenstance or the fact that someone wasn't in a good mood. You just got to try a few different times, and also even with the whole thing of like someone being.
Thank you so much for your time. And I will see
You're
you
welcome.
soon.
Pleasure.
Yep.
Cheers. Bye.